It's officially September, and this marks the first week of Deaf Awareness Month in Kenya and globally. During this week, we will spread awareness on deaf people, culture, and issues pertaining to the deaf community. The theme of this month is reaffirming deaf people's human rights. We are coming to you live from Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome to Africa Focus, where we bring you news from across the continent right here on Switch TV Kenya. My name is Joel Chacha, and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. Start interacting with us on our social media platforms at Switch TV Kenya, Joel Chacha M on Twitter, and as well on Facebook, Switch TV Kenya and Joel Chacha. Send in an SMS via 22999 free of charge. But first, here are stories making headlines. The World Health Organization says no country can just pretend the COVID-19 pandemic is over. Sudanese leaders and rebel commanders have agreed on a peace deal, a crucial step towards ending 17 years of conflict. Demonstrations rocked the capital of Mauritius in protest of the government's handling of an oil spill. We begin with Africa Roundup stories.
Tanzanian President John Magufuli has pledged to improve the economy and complete unfinished projects during a speech that marked the launch of his re-election campaign. Magufuli is due to face 14 challenges in his bid to secure a second term in October 28th election. Some of his opponents include Tundu Lissu, who returned to the country from Belgium in early August, where he had sought treatment after surviving a 2017 assassination attempt in which he was shot 16 times. During his speech on Saturday, the 60-year-old Magufuli promised supporters that should he get re-elected, his administration will focus on boosting the country's gross domestic product and completing several projects aimed at making Tanzania a great nation. Supporters of former Ivory Coast President Laurent Gbagbo, who lived in Belgium after being tried by the International Criminal Court on Monday, filed his candidacy for October's presidential election. Gbagbo, who was freed conditionally by ICC after he was cleared in 2019 of crimes against humanity, has been barred by the country's Electoral Commission from running. The October 31st election in the world's top cocoa grower is set to be tense after years of political turbulence and civil war, and Gbagbo's return to national politics is highly sensitive. The country remains scared by a conflict that erupted after the 2010 vote when Gbagbo refused to hand over power to the victor, current President Alain Ouattara. Around 3,000 people lost their lives in several months of violence. Gbagbo, who has not made any political statement about whether he wishes to run against, is living in Brussels, pending the outcome of an appeal against the ICC ruling. In the meantime, he can travel provided the country of destination accepts him. Clashes erupt between young Moroccans and security forces after authorities banned Ashura commemorations in some regions as a preventive measure against the spread of the coronavirus.
Moving on to some good news. Sudanese leaders and rebel commanders have agreed on a peace deal, a crucial step towards ending 17 years of conflict in which hundreds of thousands of people have been killed. The talks were mediated by South Sudanese President Salva Kiir, who was a former comrade to some of the rebels during Sudan's earlier civil war.
Sudanese leaders and rebel commanders on Monday agreed on a historic peace deal, a crucial step towards ending 17 years of conflict in which hundreds of thousands of people were killed. Leaders of the Sudan Revolutionary Front, an umbrella organization of rebel groups from the western region of Darfur and the southern state of South Kordofan and Blue Nile, raised their fists in celebration after inking the agreement.
We do not view this initial signing of the protocols as an end in itself. We view it as the beginning of the commitment by the parties to honor and implement the agreement in the letter and spirit.
Fighting in Darfur alone left around 300,000 people dead after rebels took up arms in the vast western region in 2003, according to the United Nations, with former government leaders accused of carrying out genocide and crimes against humanity.
The agreement signed today we see as good news, and it's a commitment from our side along with other armed groups. It has been signed for the Sudanese people who have suffered from the consequences of conflict, destruction and displacement. They're looking forward to stability and unity, and to living with dignity. Today's accord is a commitment to get past the shameful situation the country is in.
Conflict in South Kordofan and Blue Nile erupted in 2011 in the wake of South Sudan's independence, resuming a war that had raged from 1983 to 2005.
By achieving such an agreement that addresses the root causes and the consequences of conflict in Sudan, Sudan has finally achieved the possibility of durable peace and can move forward in undertaking a comprehensive and genuine political transitions for the benefit of all Sudan.
The government hopes to be removed from a U.S. list of states sponsoring terrorism, which will lift many severe sanctions and allow large multilateral aid packages.
Elsewhere, West African countries are demanding an immediate civilian transition in Mali and elections within 12 months as they considered sanctions after rebel troops toppled the country's president and seized power. The demands were spelled out after the new junta released outside President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta seized in the August 18th coup, but also apparently granted the new chief the powers of head of state.
The coup, which shocked Mali's West African neighbors and ally friends, heightened worries over instability in a country already struggling with Islamist insurgency, ethnic violence, and economic stagnation. After a video summit, the 15-nation economic community of West African states called on the junta to initiate a civil transition immediately and the rapid establishment of a government to prepare the legislative and presidential elections within 12 months. In a closing statement, Niger President Mahamudu Issoufou, who also chairs ECOWAS, said sanctions will be gradually lifted depending on the implementation of the bloc's requests. ECOWAS slapped sanctions on Mali after the August coup, including a closure of border and a ban on trade and financial flows. It demanded the release of Keïta and other detained leaders and insisted on a swift return to civil rule. Keïta, who is 75 years old, was elected in 2013 as a unifying figure in a fractured country and was returned in 2018 for a second 5-year term. But his popularity crashed as he failed to counter the country's raging jihadist insurgency and break Mali's downward economy spiral. After an escalating series of mass protests, young army officers mutinied on August 18th, seized Keïta and other leaders and declaring they now governed the country. They have called the junta the National Committee for the Salvation of the People, CNSP, led by 37-year-old Colonel Assimi Goïta. Friday's video summit came after a 3-day ECOWAS visit founded over a timetable for civilian transition and the junta's announcement on the eve of the conference that Keïta had been freed. Issoufou said Keïta had told ECOWAS envoys that he resigned quite freely, convinced that his decision was necessary for peace and stability in Mali.
Away from that, demonstrators gathered in Port Louis, which is the capital of Mauritius, to protest the government's handling of an oil spill early August that has severely damaged the southeast coast. The recent discovery of around 39 lifeless dolphins washing up ashore has only added even more fuel to an already charged situation as residents took to the streets in peaceful protest to demand that the government to do right by citizens in resolving this ecological crisis accordingly. Many believe it is necessary for the sake of the future generations in the country whose economy relies heavily on these and now contaminated waters for tourism and food production.
I came to support the movement, to give my positive energy to this movement of the people of Mauritius, who for once are united in action, because rarely do people take to the streets in Mauritius. So I think it's important to be here and support this cause and to say no to what we've been going through for quite a while.
Et nous protestons contre ce gouvernement qui a été incompétent pendant ces dernières années.
We are protesting against this government, which has been incompetent in recent years, and it is so sad to see how far we have fallen. We are afraid for our future and all our children. We Mauritians must stop dividing ourselves.
Moi je dis basta, c'est fini, c'est nous les Mauriciens, arrêtons de nous diviser.
The system in general, which is screwed up. I am here more for the young people, their future, their work, and also especially for the dolphins, and because the government does not want to accept the wrong, which it has done. It does not want to accept that it did nothing to avoid this catastrophe. We are here for that.
We shift gears now to matters COVID-19 pandemic. The World Health Organization urged governments to engage with people demonstrating against COVID-19 restrictions and listen to their concerns, but stressed protesters needed to understand the virus was dangerous. This comes after many demonstrations around the world were held in protesting, or rather to protest restrictions put in place to combat COVID-19.
The World Health Organization urged government to engage with people demonstrating against COVID-19 restrictions and listen to their concerns, but stressed protesters needed to understand the virus was dangerous. Asked about recent demonstrations in a number of countries against coronavirus restrictions, WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said it was important to listen to people that are asking what people are saying.
We should listen to what people are asking, what people are saying. We should engage into an honest dialogue. And at the same time, though, to those who have demonstrated the past week, what I would like to say is the virus is real. It's dangerous. It moves fast and it kills.
German police on Saturday halted a Berlin march by tens of thousands of people opposed to coronavirus restrictions in the biggest of several European protests against face mask rules and other antivirus curbs. Several hundreds of Berlin protesters then broke through barriers and a police cordon to storm German's parliament in a move German Chancellor Angela Merkel condemned as shameful. Speaking about the broader protests, WHO Emergencies Chief Michael Ryan pointed out that epidemics and emergencies create strong emotions, and acceptance of measures is also very, very tough.
Epidemics and emergencies, create strong emotions, and acceptance of measures is always very, very tough. And it's really important that governments don't overreact to people protesting against measures. It has happened since time immemorial. The real important thing to do is enter into a dialogue with groups that feel that they're protesting against measures.
While acknowledging the importance of allowing different viewpoints to be heard, Tedros took issue with the opinions voiced by some that high death rates were not really a concern if it is mainly the elderly who are dying.
When the elderly is dying, it's not fine. It's a moral bankruptcy. We should not be morally dead. Every life, whether it's young or old, is precious. And we have to do everything to save it.
Tedros voiced understanding for the growing frustrations felt as people continue to have to deal with restrictions 8 months into the pandemic. He also insisted that no country can just pretend the pandemic is over.
So to stay ahead of the virus, avoiding amplifying events, or taking the maximum precautions when we want to do it will be very, very important.
Time to take a breather. Stay with us here on Africa Focus. Still to come. Authorities in South Africa to start probing allegations related to the misuse of COVID-19 funds. Welcome back to Africa Focus. My name is Joel Church and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. As COVID-19 pandemic strikes all parts of the country, wearing of masks has become the new normal as people are supposed to put on masks to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Different initiatives have been put in place to make sure the most vulnerable in the society get reusable face masks and also benefiting those making them by making sure they are paid for making masks. Fatuma Ngwena filed the report.
Wearing of face masks, especially the surgical masks, as advised by medical practitioners, is one of the measures that people have had to keep up with since the first cases were reported in Kenya in March this year. But the question is, are all Kenyans able to purchase the masks for their safety? Face Clothes Mask Initiative in Loresho, a non-governmental organization initiative, is helping to distribute free three-ply face masks to vulnerable people in the society, such as those living in Kangemi, Kawangware, Isili, and some parts in Kakamega County. According to Mary Akinyi, who is the trainer of the tailors making the face clothes masks, says the masks are safe, comfortable, reusable, and adjustable.
Yeah, the uniqueness of these masks, actually, they are more safer. They are easy to make and they are very comfortable. Si lenye unasikia masikio umevurutwa ama you can't talk, you can't breathe. It's very flexible and it's much safer because the way we make them, it's iko na layers kama 4 ndani. And then you see it covers all sides. It has like you can adjust it. So hata mtu mwenye ako na uso nono kuniliko ama smaller face anaweza tumia because it's adjustable.
Mary Akinyi was a professional designer before the COVID-19 pandemic, and she is among many people that their businesses were affected by COVID-19. But the initiative of face clothes masks has helped her, since she's getting paid per mask that she designs.
So when you walikuja wakafunga boda, nini, so it just stopped. Like I was really affected. So when they called me, it was like, ilinisaidia sana mimi na familia yangu because when nilikuja nikatengeneza pattern nikaanza kwa train, so I cut for them, I get paid. Now I can manage to help my family, to support my family and other things.
Kila mtu anapewa mask zake 100, unaenda nazo nyumbani kwenye uko comfortable kuzishonea. Kuna mwenye na take 3 days 2 days inalingana na speed yako, but sasa mimi nachukua 1 week kuzitengeneza. Alafu naleta ndio napata ile pesa.
As COVID-19 continues to rise with speculations of schools and other learning institutions reopening earlier than January next year, children's safety from the virus disease in all parts of the country, one of the ways ensuring they put on face masks among others, will be a concern.
I would say one of the things that COVID has taught us, as we now have stayed with it for several months, is that we still have the power to be kind to one another.
Meanwhile, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has authorized a special investigating unit, SIU, to start probing allegations related to the misuse of COVID-19 funds. Some of the complaints raised against officials and companies are related to the manufacture of face masks, the distribution of food passes, and siphoning funds fraudulently through supposed awareness campaigns.
I have authorized the Special Investigating Unit to probe any allegations relating to the misuse of COVID-19 funds across all spheres of the state. Work of the recently established Special Coordination Center, which is called the Fusion Center, which brings together all the criminal justice entities to strengthen the collective efforts among law enforcement agencies to prevent, to detect, to investigate, and to prosecute COVID-related corruption. We had to confront the reality that the violence that is perpetrated by men against women in our country had become a national emergency that required urgent and decisive action. It is the type of emergency which I also characterize as a second pandemic that we are having to deal with. Through the reprioritization of resources, we were able to allocate around 1.6 billion rand to implement the emergency response plan in the remaining months of the financial year.
Still in the country, South African police clashed with protesters demonstrating against the alleged killing of a 16-year-old boy by local policemen in El Dorado Park, an area of Soweto near Johannesburg. Residents charged that Nathaniel Julius was shot by police and dropped off at the Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital, where he died. Angry residents gathered to protest the death and called for the arrest of police officers responsible. The demonstrators barricaded roads and burned tires. Police fired rubber bullets and tear gas to disperse the protesters, also affecting passing motorists, bystanders and journalists covering the demonstration. On to other news. A balloon flying at an altitude of 20 kilometers launched by Google to extend internet access in remote areas was found on the ground in the province of Bas-Ouele in the north of the Democratic Republic of Congo, sparking false rumors of a fallen satellite. The Loon Project balloon, piloted by Google's parent company Alphabet, was found in the Bas-Ouele province on August 24th, according to Congolese authorities.
I consider this device to be an identified flying object. A Congolese subject and another Pakistani subject who arrived because they wanted to retrieve this device. Fortunately, they were apprehended by the forces of law and order. They are in the middle of a hearing by a public prosecutor's office. All the authorities in place were not informed at all. We were surprised to learn that this device came to ground here in this site. I believe that the investigations continue.
At least 1 million Kenyans have lost their jobs or have been put on indefinite unpaid leave months after the COVID-19 pandemic found its way into the country, resulting to a major job crisis. Youths in Majengoi area in Transmara West, that is Narok County, have been forced to be innovative after losing income. Andrew Kero narrates.
The group of youths who were previously employed and now jobless due to COVID-19 pandemic have decided that this pandemic will not limit them from feeding for their respective families and themselves.
Tulianza kwa umbali sana, tulianza na car wash na tumekuwa tukifanya miradi tofauti, isipokuwa maneno ya corona ndio ilikuja ikatuletea tatizo kidogo. Tukaanza kufungiwa manyumba, tukajikusana vijana, tukaenda tukajenga nyumba juu ya miti.
Derek Kisilo, who was working in Transmara Sugar Company as the farmer tenant before COVID-19, has been the leader of Nguvu Moja self-help groups since the pandemic broke out, and narrates to us how often he lost his job. He decided to focus on giving back to his society with the help of his group members.
Tuko na projects kama ya miti, tuko na ya fish pond, tuko na ya poultry, na pia sisi hufanya kazi ya kujivolunteer ya barabara. Si utengeneza barabara, wahisani wanatupatia kitu kidogo ile ambayo.
The Nguvu Moja group came together 3 months ago and initiated multiple projects that have helped them to stay afloat during these times. And what's more interesting about them is that they have been volunteering on a part-time basis to do partial repairs on the damaged feeder roads and filling potholes in the area so as to ease transport in the villages in the area. Their team of 10 then decided to build their new home on top of a tree to ensure they use up their donated space maximally. Michael Kiptenga, a pastor from Kilgoris who also owns a hotel, said that he has been observing the group of youths volunteering and being creative, and so he decided to support them by offering them a cup of tea in the morning and also some soup to continue encouraging them in their good work.
Mimi pia niko na hoteli hapa, nilipoona wanaumia hata upande wa njaa, nikawa na supply hawa, hata na mimi napika subu na wasapoti na subu asubuhi ama chai, lunch wanakuja wanakula, at least wanapata nguvu. Sasa ndipo sisi tulikuwa naomba kama hawa vijana wangepata wahisani ambao wanaweza simama na hapa Kilgoris.
He ever challenged community leaders to support them by investing in their activities. Andrew Kera, Switch TV.
And now getting sporty here on Africa Focus, the Electoral Commission of the Ivorian Soccer Federation, FIF, rejected the candidacy of former international star striker Didier Drogba for the presidency of the federation. The FIF's Electoral Commission ruled that the former Chelsea striker did not fulfill its long list of eligibility criteria, and his bid was rejected as 2 of the names he had submitted as his sponsors were ruled not to have the necessary authority to do so. That's all here on Africa Focus today, but keep the conversation going on our social media platforms at Switch TV Kenya, Joel Chacha M on Twitter, and as well on Facebook, Switch TV Kenya and Joel Chacha. My name is Joel Chacha and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. Until next time, do have yourself a great day.